The Scarecrow and his Servant, Day 6. And poor Jack sank down to the ground, too weak to stand up any longer. In a moment, the Scarecrow was kneeling by his side. Jack, Jack, what was I thinking of? If that blackbird hadn't stolen my brain, you could have made some pea soup. But as it is, the rest of my head is at your disposal, my dear servant. Cut yourself a slice of my turnip and feast to your heart's content. So Jack struggled up and, not wanting to hurt the Scarecrow's feelings, took his little pocket knife and tried to find a place to cut a slice of his master's turnip. The poor thing was so battered and bruised and dried out that it was scarcely a vegetable anymore, and it was as hard as a piece of wood. But Jack managed to find a bit around the back where he could cut a little slice, and he did, and crammed it into his mouth. Not all at once, my boy, you'll choke, said the Scarecrow. Nibble, that's the thing to do, and drink plenty of water. The turnip was hardly edible at all. It was dry and woody and bitter, and it took so much chewing that every mouthful took 5 minutes to soften and swallow. Nevertheless, Jack ate it, and even thought he felt it doing him good. By the time he'd finished, the Scarecrow had come back with some pretty shells from the beach. They spent an hour or so sorting them out, and then they stuck them on the ceiling of the little grotto. Then they dug a lake around it and let some water into it from the stream, and that kept them going until sunset. And by then Jack's belly was so empty that he kept on making little moaning sounds, and the Scarecrow offered him another slice of turnip. But there was hardly anything left to hack. A few bitter shreds were all Jack had for supper, and while he hugged his empty belly and tried to fall asleep, the Scarecrow pottered about in the moonlight, fitting every jewel and every gold ornament and every piece of priceless jewelry into the grotto palace until it was perfect, and it glittered over its reflection in the tiny lake, looking fit for the Queen of the Fairies. Chapter 11. An Invitation. Just before he woke up in the morning, Jack had a dream. He dreamed he was just lying there on the sand listening to a conversation in the air above. He couldn't see who was talking, but they had rusty voices, like old barbed wire being pulled through holes in a tin can. I bet you the small one goes before the day's out, said one voice. I reckon the big one's gone already, said the other. No, he's a monster, and they go on forever. Thin pickings these days, brother. I heard there was a great battle on the mainland, feasting for days, my cousin said. All gone when I got there. Bones, nothing but bones. The land's bare, brother. The soldiers move on, and who knows where they go. Aye, who knows? Did you hear of the factories they're building in Spring Valley? They're making poisons, brother, poisons for the land. Is that little feller dead yet? Jack had been listening in his dream, and all of a sudden, with a horrible shock, he realized that it wasn't a dream at all, and that 2 vultures were sitting in the palm tree directly above him. Go away, he managed to shout in a voice almost as hoarse as theirs. Go on, scram. His cry awoke the Scarecrow, who leapt up at once. Leave this to me, Jack, he cried. This is Scarecrow's work. And he uttered a blood-curdling cry and opened and shut his umbrella several times. The vultures, duly scared, spread their wings and lumbered away. My dear servant, the Scarecrow said, full of compassion as he turned to Jack, how long had those 2 villains been sitting up there? I don't know, master. I heard them talking, and I thought it was a dream. I wish it had been. They said I was almost a goner. Oh, master, ever since we began, there's been people talking about eating me. Now the birds are at it, too, and I'm the one that needs to eat. Have another slice of my head, Jack. As long as I have a turnip on my shoulders, you shall not want for nourishment, dear boy. So Jack sawed away and cut himself another little scrap of his master's head, and chewed it hard with lots of water. But the poor Scarecrow was looking a great deal the worse for wear by now. Jack's knife had left deep gouges in the turnip, and the bits that were too tough to cut stuck out like splinters. While Jack sat there gnawing the bitter root and trying to make it last a bit longer, the Scarecrow went off to inspect the grotto. He had an idea for improving the southern frontage, he said, but he'd only been gone a minute when Jack heard a furious yell. He struggled to his feet and hurried to see what was the matter. He found the Scarecrow stamping with fury and shouting, You flying fiends! How dare you! I'll bite your beaks off! I'll fill you full of stones! I'll boil you! You vagabonds! You housebreakers! Squatting in our grotto! Shoot! Be gone! Calm down, master. You'll do yourself a mischief, said Jack. What's going on? He got down on his knees and peered into the grotto. Blimey, he said, for right in the center there was a nest, and sitting on the nest was a little speckled bird. As Jack watched, another little bird flew in with a worm, and gave it to the one on the nest. And as the one on the nest reached up for the worm, Jack saw that there were 4 eggs beneath her. Eggs, thought Jack. Eggs! Jack, called the Scarecrow from behind him. Be careful, they go for the eyes, these fiends. Stand back and let me deal with them. The 2 little speckled birds were looking at Jack. He licked his lips and swallowed. Then he sighed. I suppose, he said reluctantly, you better stay there since you've got some eggs to look after. They said nothing. Jack, said the Scarecrow anxiously. It's all right, Master, said Jack, standing up and feeling dizzy so that he had to hold on to the Scarecrow for a moment. They're sitting on some eggs. Eggs, eh? Said the Scarecrow severely. Well, that obviously means that hostilities are suspended until they hatch. Very well, he called. You birds in there, in a view of your impending parenthood, I shall not scare you away, but you must keep the place tidy and leave as soon as your chicks have flown. The male bird flew out and perched on a nearby twig. Good morning, he said. And what do you do? The Scarecrow blinked and scratched his turnip. Well, he began. Lord Scarecrow is in the agricultural business, said Jack. Jolly good, said the bird. And have you come a long way? All the way from Spring Valley, said the Scarecrow. Splendid. Well done, said the bird, and flew away. Now Jack was sure he was hallucinating. As a matter of fact, he didn't feel well at all. Jack, my boy, said the Scarecrow, I wonder if I could ask you to adjust my turnip a fraction. I think it's coming loose. Let's go down to the beach, Master, Jack said. It's too bright to see here. There's a bit of shade there, under the coconut tree. Leaning on his digging stick, Jack made his way through the scrubby bushes with the Scarecrow holding the umbrella over him. It really was almost too hot to bear. When they reached the coconut tree, they had a surprise, because a flock of pigeons rode out of it noisily, making the leaves wave. And just as the pigeons flew away, a coconut fell onto the sand with a thud. Oh, thank goodness, cried Jack, and ran to pick it up. He turned it over and over, feeling the milk sloshing this way and that. He took out his knife and dug a hole in the end and drank every drop. There wasn't actually as much as he thought, and what was more, it was growing rancid. Jack, my boy, help. The Scarecrow was tottering and stumbling over the sand, trying to hold his turnip on, but it had been so bashed and hacked about that it wasn't going to stay on. And besides, as Jack saw when he helped his master sit down in the shade, the broomstick he'd had for a spine was badly cracked. Dear, oh dear, Master, you're in worse state than me, Jack said. At least we can do something about you. Lie still and I'll take your spine out first. Then put my digging stick there instead. Is it a dangerous operation? Said the Scarecrow faintly. Nothing to it, said Jack. Just don't wriggle. As soon as the new spine was in place, Jack picked up the turnip, but alas, it fell apart entirely. And now what could he do? There was only one thing for it. Here we go, Master, he said. Here's a new head for you. He jammed the coconut down into the end of the digging stick, and at once the Scarecrow sat up. He turned his new head from side to side and brushed the tuft of spiky hair on the top. He looked just like himself again. In fact, he looked much better than before. You look very handsome, Master, said Jack. I feel handsome. I don't think I've ever felt so handsome, Jack, my boy. You are a wonder. Thank you 1,000 times. But the wandering about in the hot sun and the rancid coconut milk on his empty stomach were all too much for Jack. Can I sit under your umbrella for a minute, Master? Said Jack. I'm feeling ever so hot and dizzy. Of course. So they sat side by side for a few minutes, but Jack couldn't keep upright. He kept slipping sideways and leaning on the Scarecrow's chest. His master let him rest there until he fell asleep. And once again Jack had a dream and heard voices. This time one of them belonged to the Scarecrow himself, and he was speaking quietly, but with a great deal of force. It's just as well for you that my servant is asleep on my breast, because otherwise I'd leap up and scare you in a moment. But I don't want to wake him. You chose your moment well, you scoundrel. No, you've got it wrong, said the other voice, a light and musical voice that seemed to come from a bush nearby. I've got a message for you, from the Grand Congress of all the birds. Grand Congress of all the birds? Said the Scarecrow with bottomless scorn. I've never heard of it. Your ignorance is legendary, said the bird. Well, thank you, but don't think you can get around me with your flattery. Since I can't move, I suppose I shall have to listen to your preposterous message. Then I shall read it out. The 84,578 Grand Congress is hereby convened on Coconut Island, that being the place chosen by their majesties, the king and queen of all the birds. The president and council send their greetings to Lord Scarecrow and invite him to attend as principal guest of honor to receive the thanks of the Congress for this gift of Royal Palace and to discuss the matter of Spring Valley and... Spring Valley, cried the Scarecrow. What's all this? I haven't finished, said the bird. To discuss the matter of Spring Valley and to make common purpose in order to restore the good working of the land to our mutual benefit. There, he concluded. That's it. Well, I'm astonished, said the Scarecrow. Spring Valley is a very important place, and if you're going to start deciding what to do about it, I insist that I have the right to speak on the subject. But that's exactly what we're inviting you to do. Well, why didn't you say so? Now you understand. I shall have to bring my servant with me. Out of the question. What? He is a human being. We birds are meeting in Congress for hundreds of thousands of years before human beings existed, and they have brought us nothing but trouble. You are welcome as our guest of honor, because we're not scared of you, whereas we are scared of humans, and Scarecrow leapt to his feet. Not scared of me? How dare you not be scared of me? I've got a good mind to make war on the whole kingdom of birds. And he stamped away, waving his arms in a fury. Jack couldn't keep his eyes closed any longer. He sat up and blinked in the burning sunlight, and the messenger bird flew to another bush a bit farther off. Jack said, "No, please, listen. Don't let my master's manner put you off. He is highly strung, Lord Scarecrow is. He's got nerves like piano wires. The fact is," he added quietly, looking around to see the Scarecrow stomping up and down and gesticulating in the distance, "I don't think he'd manage very well without me. He's a great hero, no doubt about it, but he's as simple as a baby in some ways. Ever since his heart was broken by a broomstick, he's been desperate, just desperate. His brain even fell out, and I'll see if I can get him to change his mind." "Don't be long," said the bird testily. Squinting against the glare, Jack stumbled through the bushes and out onto the beach. He fell over 3 times before the Scarecrow saw him. His master came hurrying over the sand, his anger forgotten. "Jack, Jack, my boy, are you ill?" "I think I'm going to croak, master. I think I'm going to kick the bucket. But listen, I have given you good advice, haven't I? What I've said to you made sense, didn't it?" The best sense in the world," said the Scarecrow warmly. "No sense like it." "Then do as I suggest and say thank you very much to this bird, and go and attend the Grand Congress. And maybe you can get to Spring Valley, even if I don't." "Without you, my faithful servant?" "I don't think I'll ever see it, master. I'm done for. That's what I think." "I shall never leave your side, and you may tell the crusted charlatan so, in no uncertain terms." So poor Jack had to haul himself up and stagger back to the bird. "He says he'd be delighted to accept your invitation," he said, "and he sends his compliments to the president and council." "I should think so, too," said the bird. "Did I?" Jack tried to say, but he could hardly get any words out. "Did I hear you right, or was I dreaming? Those 2 little speckled birds that made their nest in the grotto, you said they were the king and queen of all the birds?" "That is correct." "Oh, good," said Jack. But he couldn't say anything else, because he felt himself falling sideways, and then he felt nothing at all. Chapter 12. The Grand Congress. Jack woke up to find himself lying on his back and gazing up at a bright blue sky. He was lying on something soft and comfortable, so he naturally thought he was dead. But the angels were making a lot of noise. In fact, he wondered why St. Peter or the Holy Ghost or someone didn't come along and tell them all to stop quarreling. They sounded like a lot of squawking birds. Birds! He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and looked around. He was sitting in the middle of the island, a little way from the reservoir and the grotto palace, under the shade of a bush whose leaves and branches had been woven together over his head. Someone had gone to the trouble of putting a lot of soft leaves down for him to lie on, and right next to him there was a pile of fruits and nuts and berries. "Food, thank goodness," he said, and ate it all up, feeling much better at once. And everywhere there were birds, giant eagles wheeling above, herons at the edge of the reservoir, jackdaws strutting up and down, skylarks trilling in the sky, flamingos, robins, seagulls, ibises with long curved beaks, a pelican, and even an ostrich. They were flying, singing, pecking, washing themselves, fluttering their feathers, arguing, clucking, and altogether making so much noise that Jack could hardly think. But where was the Scarecrow? Jack stood up and shaded his eyes against the brilliant sun and gazed all around. Near the beach he saw his master's familiar shape striding along stiffly, talking and gesticulating to a flock of birds that were moving along with him. "Well, I'm blowed," said Jack to himself, and set off through the bushes to find out more. "Jack, my boy," said the Scarecrow, waving cheerfully, you've woken up at last. How are you feeling, my dear servant?" "Well, I don't know, master," Jack said, making his way shakily over to where his master was standing. Although the birds didn't seem afraid of the Scarecrow at all, they flew away when Jack came up, and he and the Scarecrow were able to talk without being overheard. "I suppose I'm still alive," Jack went on, "and my arms and legs are all working, so I reckon I must be all right. But what's going on, master? Where did the birds come from?" What happens is that every 10 years the king and queen choose somewhere to make a nest, and then they summon all the birds to the Grand Congress. Very simple, you see, primitive, really suits their childish minds. But they were so pleased with the palace we built for them, that they just wouldn't go anywhere else. Oh, and I made them let you stay, and bring you some fruit and nuts and so on. I said I wouldn't accept their gold medal otherwise." "They're going to give you a gold medal? That's wonderful, master." Yes, they were thrilled. But look, they're calling everyone together. On the topmost branch of a shrub near the grotto palace, a chaffinch was calling loudly. All the other birds stopped and what they were doing and flew, or strutted or waddled or glided into the space in front of her and settled down to listen. Birds of every degree, the chaffinch called, waiters, swimmers, flyers, and walkers, welcome to the 84,578 Grand Congress of all the birds. I call upon our noble president to open the proceedings and welcome our guests. An elderly pelican hopped onto a rock and spoke in a deep, sonorous voice. "I declare this Congress open," he said. "We have much urgent and important business to discuss, but our first task is the pleasant one of announcing the winner of our gold medal. We have acclaimed many distinguished laureates in the past, but few whose accomplishments were as varied as those of our guest today." With no regard for his personal safety, he clambered high up a stone wall to restore the fallen chick of Dr. and Mrs. Owl to his parents' nest. Secondly, ignoring the danger of riot and pursuit, He bravely set free 5 linnets, 6 goldfinches, and 7 blackbirds from their sordid and miserable captivity. Thirdly, in the midst of a deadly battle and a great personal risk, he carried the nest of Senora Robin to a place of safety. Lots of little birds were gazing in admiration at the Scarecrow, who stood beside Jack with a pleasing expression on his coconut. And finally, using the utmost resources of his architectural skill, our gold medalist built a palace of jewels for their majesties, our king and queen, to nest in. I'm happy to report the appearance of 4 chicks this morning. The parents and the chicks are all very well. The birds cheered loudly. Several took off and flew around in delight before landing again. The chaffinch called for silence. All the birds fell still once more, and then he said, I now invite Lord Scarecrow to come forward and receive the gold medal and say a few words. The Scarecrow moved with great dignity between the ranks of watching birds and stood beside the president, while 4 hummingbirds flew over the top of Scarecrow's head, dropped a scarlet ribbon very neatly around his neck. The medal hanging from it gleamed proudly on his tattered chest. The Scarecrow cleared his throat and began, Your Majesties, Mr. President, birds of every kind and degree. Everyone fell still. Jack crossed his fingers. It gives me great pleasure, the Scarecrow went on, to stand here today and receive this tribute. It is true, in the past we may have had our disagreements. Some of your people may have stolen. The President coughed disapprovingly and said, We don't refer to it as stealing, Lord Scarecrow. Please confine yourself to general remarks of friendly nature. Oh, you're trying to censor me, are you? Said the Scarecrow briskly. I must say that's typical. I come here in a spirit of friendship to do you the honor of accepting this paltry babble. And you treat me like the birds were squawking. With indignation and raising their wings and shaking their heads, the President clattered his beak loudly for silence and said, Paltry babble, how dare you? I never heard such insolence. The Scarecrow was about to lose his temper. There was only one thing to be done. Excuse me, Jack called out. Excuse me, Your Majesties. Mr. President, Lord Scarecrow, and everyone, I think there's just been a bit of trouble with the translation. But we are all speaking the same language, protested the President. There's no doubt whatsoever about the monstrous and unpardonable insult that this thing has just expressed. No doubt at all. Thing, sir. Thing, did you call me? Cried the Scarecrow, and his umbrella opened and closed in a passion. Well, you see, that's just what I mean, said Jack, carefully making his way through the ranks of the birds. Mr. President, sir, it's clear to me that you're speaking in different languages. You're talking bird, which is a rich and noble tongue, worthy of the great nation of feathered heroes who speak it. And Lord Scarecrow is talking coconut, which is a subtle and mysterious language full of wisdom and music. So if you'd let me translate for you. And who are you? You are a human being. What are you doing here? Demanded the President. Me, sir. My name is Jack, sir. Just a boy. That's right. No more than a lowly servant, sir. But I humbly offer my services at the most dangerous time in world affairs in the interest of peace and harmony. So if you just let me tell Lord Scarecrow what you're saying and tell you what he's saying, I'm sure this Congress will get on very happily. The President snorted. Well, you can begin by saying that unless Lord Scarecrow apologizes for that intolerable insult, we shall have no alternative but to strip him of his gold medal and declare war. Certainly, said Jack, bowing low. He turned to the Scarecrow and said, Lord Scarecrow, the President offers you his profound apologies and begs you to regard this little exchange of words as merely a storm in a teacup. Oh, does he? Said the Scarecrow. You can tell him in return that I am proud. I am a proud and free Scarecrow, unused to tyranny and despotic rule of a set of feathered popinjays, and I shall never submit to censorship. Right-o, master, said Jack. He turned to the President and said, Lord Scarecrow presents his most cordial and earnest compliments and begs the Congress to regard his hasty words of a moment ago as being merely the natural and warm-hearted exuberance of one who has all his life cherished the highest and most passionate regard for all the nation of birds. He asked me to add that he has never in his whole life received an honor that means as much to him as this gold medal, and he is already the holder of the Order of Emerald Wurzel, the Troop Cup, and the Parsnip Challenge Trophy. What's more, he's a Knight of the Broomstick, but he'd gladly relinquish all those honors in favor of your gold medal, which he intends to wear with a full and grateful heart for the rest of his days. He said all that, did he? Said the President suspiciously. It's what they call a compressed language, coconut, said Jack. Is it? Well, if that is the case, then I am happy to accept his apology, said the President, bowing stiffly to the Scarecrow. He says he offers his most humble apology, Jack told the Scarecrow. Didn't sound like that to me, said his master. In fact, no, he was speaking in bird. Ah, I see, said the Scarecrow. What an extraordinary language. That's why you need an interpreter, master. Indeed, how lucky that you speak it so fluently. Well, in that case, I am happy to accept his apology, and the Scarecrow bowed very stiffly to the President. Seeing this display of mutual respect, all the birds broke into a storm of singing and shouting and flapping and squawking and chirping and cooing. The The Scarecrow responded by beaming widely, and bowing in all directions, and thus everyone, for the moment, became the best of friends. But Jack thought that would probably need a good interpreter for some time to come. After the formalities, the Congress moved on to discuss the business of Spring Valley, but the Scarecrow didn't seem to be able to keep his mind on it. Several birds gave reports on the Buffalini Corporation's poison factory and the way they diverted the streams and drained the wells and dried up the fountains, but all the Scarecrow could do was fidget and scratch and pluck at his clothes. When they broke for recess, Jack said, "Are you all right, Master? You look a little out of sorts." "I think I'm leaking, my boy," said the Scarecrow. "I'm suffering a severe loss of straw." Jack had a look. "It's true, Master," he said. "Something must have loosened your stuffing. We'll have to get you some more." "What are you doing?" said the Chaffinch, flying down to look. "What's going on? What's the matter?" "Lord Scarecrow's leaking," Jack explained. "We've got to find some more stuffing for him." "Nothing to it. You leave it to us," said the Chaffinch, and flew away. "I'll take all this old straw out, Master," said Jack. "It's been soaked and dried and battered about so much that you could do with new filling. You'll feel much better for it, you take my word." He pulled out handfuls of dusty old straw, bits of twig, scraps of rag, and all the other bits and pieces the Scarecrow was so full of. "I feel very hollow," said the Scarecrow. "I don't like it a bit. I can hear myself echoing." "Don't worry, Master. We'll soon have you filled up again. Hello, what's this?" Tucked in the middle of all the straw was a little packet of paper wrapped in oilskin. "That's my inner conviction," said the Scarecrow. "Don't throw that away, whatever you do." Jack unwrapped the oilskin. Inside it there was a sheet of paper covered in writing. "Oh dear," said Jack. "I hoped there'd be a picture. I can't read this, Master. Can you?" "Alas, no," said the Scarecrow. "I think my education was interrupted." By that time a flock of birds had begun to fly down, each carrying a piece of straw or twig or a bit of moss, and under the Chaffinch's direction they packed them securely into the Scarecrow's inside. Each bird flew in, wove its contribution into the rest, and darted out again. "They're doing some good stuffing, Master," said Jack. "I'll put this back now, and they can finish it off." "What's that?" said the Chaffinch. "What have you got there? What is it?" "It's my inner conviction," said the Scarecrow. "What's it say? What's it all about?" "We don't know," said Jack. "We can't read." With a loud chirp of impatience, the Chaffinch flew away. The other birds went on packing the Scarecrow, but word had got around, and the President himself came along to have a look. While the little birds flew in and out, the Scarecrow displayed his inner conviction proudly. "You see, it's bound in oilskin," he said proudly. "So all through our adventures it's been perfectly preserved. I knew it was there," he added. "I've been certain of it all my life." "Yes, but what does it say, you half-wit?" demanded the President. "Are you too silly to know what your inner conviction is?" The Scarecrow opened his mouth to protest, but then remembered and looked at Jack for the translation. But Jack didn't have time to say a word because a harsh caw from behind him made him jump, and he turned around to see an elderly raven fly down and land on the grass. She nodded to the President, who bowed very respectfully back at her. "Good day, Granny Raven," he said. "Well, where is it?" she said. "There's paper from inside the Scarecrow. Come on, let's have a look." Jack unfolded it for her, and she put a big claw on it and read it silently. Then she looked up. "You, boy," she said to Jack, "I want a word with you. Come over here." Jack followed her to a quiet spot a little way away. "I heard about your so-called translating," she said. "You're a bright lad, but don't push your luck. Now tell me about the Scarecrow, and don't leave anything out." So Jack told her everything that had happened from the moment he heard the Scarecrow calling for help in the muddy field to the moment when he'd fainted from hunger the day before. "Right," she said. "Now there's going to be big trouble coming, and the Scarecrow is going to need that inner conviction of his more than ever. Fold it up and put it back inside him, and don't let him lose it." "But why, Granny Raven? What's this trouble? And is he going to be in any danger? I mean, he's as brave as a lion, but he's not all there in the head department. If you see what I mean." "Not that sort of trouble. Legal trouble. Buffalini trouble." "Well, we can run away." "No, you can't. Not anymore. They're on your trail. We've got a couple of days' advantage, so we've got to make the most of it." "I don't like the sound of this at all." "There's a chance," said Granny Raven, "but only if you do exactly as I tell you. And hurry up. We haven't got a moment to lose."